Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Diablo 4 video, all the way from Auckland, New Zealand. I'm here for the ExileCon trip, and hence the quality of this audio recording might not be what you'd expect from the other videos that we have. Either way, let's crack into it. The build is a mix between a Shadow Mist, also called Infinimist, and a Mendon Summoner build. Me and the other player, Sinity X, have been using the Mendon Summoner build to destroy Uber Lilith in the endgame of Diablo 4 quite consistently. And this has now been tweaked and finalized. Big shout out to Sinity for coming up with the finalized version of this. This build is, during Season 1, what I would deem and call out to be the best Necromancer build that you can play, both for generic clearing as well as endgame content like Uber Lilith, and it's just absolutely insane. So the playstyle is very similar to the Infinimist or Shadow Mist build, where you're basically going to try to sit inside your Blood Mist, being immune to damage at a consistent basis. This is now woven in with the idea that with a high level Decrepit or Decrepit Heart, you're actually able to consistently have the Decrepify curse up, so you never have to stop anything you're doing to cast the curse. This allows us to smack out every time between the Blood Mist to use Bone Prison, which will trigger the Shadow, the actual Mendon Summoner ring approach to do the tons of damage to that one, and then back into Blood Mist. So you're basically nowhere near being at a risk of dying with this build, and the Barber Heart stacks up the actual crits quite consistently, making you able to reach numbers above 300 million, creating an insane playstyle with stupidly high damage output whilst remaining extremely safe. So let's just crack into the approach of the D4 builds link. I do have a written guide for this, which will be updated tonight as well, linked in the descriptions below. So let's just talk about quickly the hearts and the aspect powers. We're going to run an explosive Shadow Mist or explosive Mist approach, which allows our Blood Mist to generate our corpse explosions. We're going to run it with a Vicious for the extra skeletal mages. Aspect of the Decay, this is so that our Shadow Blight key passive will trigger and do tons more damage. We're also going to run a Disobedience for the armor, of course, Ghostwalker for the increased movement speed, which happens after Blood Mist, and then Osseous Gale to make sure that we have that extra uptime of our Bone Storm, which gives us not just damage reduction, but also is helping us reach that 100% chance to crit. Now, what's really interesting when it comes to this is that with the Grasping Veins aspect on our amulet, we're actually able to reach a point where you want to push yourself to 50% chance of critical strike without the Grasping Veins and without the Bone Storm active. So if you do that through gear, you can actually get those extra 50% from the Bone Storm and a perfect roll Grasping Veins on the amulet. Obviously, this is all based around the Ring of Mendon unique ring. You need this item to make this build function. And then the last ring enchant or aspect is the Blighted, which will increase your damage significantly with the Shadow Blight key passive. The aspect Ultimate Shadow is helping our Bone Storm and make sure that is dealing shadow damage so that we can further trigger our approaches of our damage output. And together with the Osseous Gale, we're going to look at a 100% chance uptime, or 100% uptime rather. Gems, very simple. We're going to have vulnerable enemies consistently through our the corpse tendrils. So we're going to use an emerald in our weapon, and across the board, we're going to run with a ruby life jewels. Now, the thing is, you could run with a topaz, but since we are consistently going to be in Blood Mist, it makes very little sense to run a topaz. So we're going to stick with the red ones in our gear. Heart-wise, the Sacrilegious is allowing us to consistently every second generate a corpse consumption. With this build, we'll be either resummoning our skeletons automatically, unless we have full. It will also automatically cast our corpse tendrils and or our corpse explosion. And this is how the Sacrilegious will work and makes it very, very effective to play with. The Decrepit Aura is very specific for this build. This is an endgame Summoner or Necromancer build. The Decrepit Aura at a high level can actually be with 0 enemies near you. This allows you to have 100% uptime of your Decrepify Aura, which means you never have to have this on your action bar. And the last heart is the Barber, Wrathful Heart. When this triggers, it makes it so that all critical strikes, which we're going to have 100% chance to, and subsequent damage within the 2 to 4 seconds window is absorbed by the target, and then afterwards it's just destroying everything because it's then popping all of those damage with an increased damage to it. It's just absolutely disgusting how crazy the Barber is for clearing specifically, because it's splashing it, so it's very effective on higher Nightmare dungeon pushes, but also does insane damage numbers, as you can see in the gameplay footage, hitting over 300 million. The action bar is going to use Array Skeletons, Bone Storm, Blood Mist, Corpse Explosion, Corpse Tendrils, and Bone Prison. Bone Prison is because of the current bug, which has been there for quite some time, which triggers our Lucky Hit consistently, which is also triggering a Ring of Mendel with the Bone Prison. So again, the playstyle is pop your Bone Storm, pop the Bone Prison, jump into Blood Mist, and that's it. Rinse, repeat the process. If you Bone Storm is down, you pop a new one. If Bone Prison is down, you pop a new one. Go back into Blood Mist. You just sit in that consistently thanks to the Decrepify. Minion-wise, we're going to use a corpse-generating Reaper Skeletons. We're going to use Shadow Mages to trigger more Shadow Blights. And obviously Sacrificing Golem to get more Trigger Strike damage. I'm going to quickly go through the gearing a little rough here before we check out the Paragon board. This will all be reflected in the actual build guide tonight as well. The helmet, we're going to use armor, life, cooldown reduction, and all stats. The most important stats here is obviously cooldown reduction, and then obviously you're looking at life and armor for your personal defenses, and lastly all stats. Obviously you can use anything else here if you don't have a 4-stat item. Chest piece, we're looking at defensive stats across the board, which means armor, total the damage reduction versus enemy affected by Shadow Dot, close enemies and distant enemies. You could remove the distant for have a generic global damage reduction as well. It's fine, but this is what I would prefer to showcase. Gloves, critical strike chance, very, very important because we want to reach that 50% without the Bone Stormer, without Grasping Veins. Lucky hit chance, very, very important. And critical strike chance against the injured enemy can be functional to some degree, but any other mods would work here as well. It's all about reaching that 100% chance to crit, and we can do that without this modifier, but it is a very helpful one if you're low on gearing, and this will help quite a lot once enemies get injured. All stats to help you reach the efficiency of the Paragon boards, nodes, and whatnot. Otherwise, things like intelligence can work very well here. Pants, again, total armor, very important. We have the effect of damage reduction versus shadow enemies, close and distant. Again, you can change the distance for a global DR if you feel the need to. Boots, we're going to run double movement speed, all stats and intelligence just to help out with the approach of the Paragon board nodes. Amulet, we're obviously going to run Amplify. It is the strongest modifier of the passives that Necromancer have access to right now. We're going to have a movement speed to make it smoother. Cooldown reduction is really important, and Rank Soul Macabre skills does help quite a lot. And then the ring, we're only having one. This one of them is unique. We're going to run critical strike chance, again, very important. Maximum minion life helps quite a lot to keeping them alive in this case, so we're going to look for that. But most importantly, vuln damage and lucky hit are the three main important stats, and the last one being minion life. The weapon should have vuln damage, damage to close, critical strike damage, and damage to enemies affected by the Shadow Dot. The Shadow Dot could be replaced by things like intelligence, but I would rather have this modifier. On the offhand, we're going to run cooldown reduction, critical strike chance, very important again that the crit strike chance is there, lucky hit chance important as well, and again another maximum minion life roll. There is a link in the description down below for the Kin's Captivating Eye. It's the unique enemy you can kill outside Kea Bardu, which you can run, but that will not give you the opportunity to have the maximum minion life. Instead, you can then get a critical strike chance modifier on it. I would recommend getting a regular normal offhand for this specific build due to the importance of these modifiers. So moving over to the actual skill tree before we check the Paragon board, we do spec in into Reap. You don't really need to. You could skip this since we're not actually using this on our action bar. But in some situations, depending on your gearing, you might want to guarantee a corpse generated by this. But I don't think that this is necessary whatsoever, which means you can actually choose to remove one of these points and move further down into Huge Flush and get 3 points here instead. You want to have the Creating Corpses from the Blood Mist. You want to have Skeletal Mastery. You want to make sure that you have your Bone Prison sorted. 1 point in Grim Harvest because you don't need to have Essence Generating for this build. And then smack up 3 Fueled in Death. And also going for the Blighted Corpse Explosion for the Miasma to make sure enemies are actually in Shadow Dot to scale our Shadow Blight key passive. 3 points in Death's Embrace. 3 points Amplify. Get the Abhorrent Decrepify and max out the Skeletal Mage Mastery. Corpse Tendrils for the Vulnerable, as well as the Necrotic Carapace. There's 2 points in here. You could, like I mentioned before, move one of the points from the Reap into running Necrotic Carapace, depending on how you feel like playing. This will obviously make it so that the corpses generated by our Reaper Skeletons will then fortify you, and that's a very effective way of layering defenses. 3 points Reaper's Pursuit for the clear speed, and then having Gloom as well as Terror for more damage output. Inspiring Leader is a must-have, and same thing with Death's Defense, giving you the maximum amount of damage minions can take, super important, and obviously the entirety of Bone Storm and then Shadow Blight. So moving over to the Paragon board, it's very, very straightforward. It's all about smacking up as many glyphs as possible. The starting board we're going to run on the right-hand side, all the way into picking up an Amplify board here. The reason we go Amplify is very simple. We get some damage increase in general, but we also get a ton of armor, which is very important for generic defenses for both ourselves and our minions. Other than that, we're going to pick up the Resilience. This is mostly for the life, because Resistance is completely useless. With that said, it is important that when you play this and you level it up, do not take the extra nodes here unless your Amplified Glyph is level enough to make room for it. This will allow us to get 10% increased multiplicative damage modifier to our build. Next board is a Scent of Death, in which we're going to bum rush all the way into the actual legendary node. On our way, we're going to pick up things like crit damage from Corrective. We're going to get the life from the Shadow Resilience. We can skip this node here and the top side to get the actual glyph, which we're going to put Control. This is the strongest glyph that you can have for this build. However, versus end-game bosses such as Lilith, this will only be applied and triggered when the enemy is actually staggered, which will happen very fast with this build. Obviously, we have things like Preservation, with the armor and intelligence. We also have the damage to injured and intelligence from the death marked. And once we've done with this board, same thing here, only take the extra intelligence if we have the glyph at level 15 or higher. We have a couple of choices. Now, I personally would actually go to the left-hand side first and pick up Bone Graft. And the reason for this is that we're going to get access to the nodes of giving us more life and armor. But most importantly, we're going to get the dexterity and bone skill damage and intelligence from here. This is mostly for the dexterity, since we are going to run an exploit glyph in here. This is damage versus vulnerable. It's an insane amount of damage that we can pick up from the exploit glyph. So we do that from the Bone Graft board. And then we're going to go back to our original board and head up towards the Deathbringer and move northbound. In here, we have damage against enemies that is affected by Shadow Dot, as well as damage to elites, very, very important. And we're also going to get some extra shadow damage in general from here, from our Shadow Blight key passive, and we pick up a Scourge. This will increase our damage over time modifier, but most importantly, the bonus modifier here makes us deal 10% damage multiplicative against enemies that are affected by the Shadow Dots. Very, very, very strong node right there. On the left-hand side, again, this is a Wither board, sorry. And then we move to the left, which we are going to pick up a Flesh Eater board. In here, we're going to pick up the Essence. This is probably one of the strongest, if not compared to the Control glyph, one of the strongest glyphs in the game for Necromancer right now, as the crit damage is no longer for just your core skills. This will apply to our Shadow Blight, it will apply to our Mendon, allowing us to do some insane damage modifiers, to stack those up together with Essence to reach stupid damages, such as over 300 million crit from the Barber. In here, we're obviously taking all of the damage to elites, since this is going to be scaling all of our damage output. We're going to pick up the Stifle, giving us damage to injured, and again, more critical strike damage modifiers here. Before we move northbound, but we're also going to pick up the Legendary Node here, because we're going to consume corpses at a very rapid rate. Northbound, we get the Cult Leader. This is the only reason we're taking this, is to get damage reduction for our minions. Its the only purpose is to make sure our minions are kept alive. They are actually not really doing damage. They are literally just there to deliver your Ring of Mendon damage source. In here, we pick up the Dead Eraser. Again, this is to increase the damage reduction modifiers that we are picking up in this area, and also that they're giving us more damage output from the additional bonus. And that pretty much covers the entirety of this well-tweaked and finalized build, and there will be a link in the descriptions to the Captivating Eye offhand farming that I mentioned earlier. There will be a link in the descriptions down below to the actual written build guide posted on Icy Veins. Again, a big shout out to Sinity for supplying the gameplay footage for me as well. But also all the time and work we've been spending on finalizing and tweaking and fine-tuning these builds, coming up with this beast of a build. I would firmly say that this is by far, and I mean by far, the strongest Necromancer build that you can play in Season 1. It's blowing things like Bone Spear out of the water. Bloodlance is really cool, but it has nothing compared to this build. You get extreme safety, extreme clear speed, and obviously an absurdly extreme single target capability. If you like this type of video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for more content, leave a comment down below what you guys feel about this build and how far you've gotten in the current season. I'd like to hear how you guys are enjoying the current season of the game. I'll see you guys in the next one. So till then, stay safe and keep rocking.